Hey everybody! I'm really excited to share this topic. This is the time of year actually for a lot of people out there who are looking to connect with loved ones who have crossed over to have their own experiences. So we can talk a little bit about that here at the end. Please know that I am open for questions here. I am going to share a little bit about my story and about how I work and some myths, some common myths that we see when it comes to people on the outside looking in at people who do this professional work and what they think it really is. So first of all, we're going to have to define mediumship. Mediumship is someone who connects directly with souls or spirits who have crossed over the other side. It doesn't necessarily have to be just through people who've crossed over. Some mediums connect to what they call spirit guides. And I think when it comes to talking about the spirit world, we're really talking about concepts that are very nebulous. Because when a medium connects, depending on who they are and their personality and their training, they all may connect very differently. There are what we call physical mediumship, and then there's mental mediumship. And I practice primarily mental mediumship. And what that means is I use my senses to connect with the people who have crossed over. I'll kind of share a little bit about my story about how this happened, because I think it's really important to know, we'll go over when I talk about these myths, that it's not something that's that unique, that many people have this sensitivity, and that many people can also practice connecting with people who have crossed over. So for myself, growing up, I was always very sensitive to spirit, and I didn't know what that really was, other than when I was in my old house that I've lived in for 4 generations of my family. There was always a sense of people watching me when I was in a room by myself, always a sense or presence of someone there nurturing, or it could be a matter of hearing a voice and then looking and there's no one there, seeing something out of the corner of my eye, looking, nothing was there. But me connecting with these things growing up. Some say playing with them. When I was in preschool, I actually had my preschool teacher had to connect with my mother, I think about a week after preschool, because I would play by myself. And I was playing with my friends. And again, these are friends that maybe didn't have physical form, because I didn't actually connect with the other students at that time. I was very much to myself. But I didn't feel lonely. So these are common stories that a lot of mediums have when they were growing up, that they've had connection with people who are not in the physical body, in the physical form. And I had all those markers growing up, but I didn't actually have any definition or word for what I did. And I didn't see it as something that was out of the ordinary. And it wasn't until I was a teenager that I got put on medication to kind of calm this down. I won't go into that long story about that, but when I was medicated for anxiety, depression, actually dampened my senses. I was unable to really connect at that time. When I turned 21, that's when, of course, you move out of the house, and my insurance ran out. I wasn't on my parents' insurance anymore, so I was no longer on my medication, and I started to sense and see spirit again. Little by little, I started to remember all of these experiences I had as a child. And one day it kind of came flooding in faster than I was really willing to have it happen. I was at a local restaurant with 2 of my friends, and luckily these 2 friends were very open-minded to this realm of the paranormal and some of the odd experiences that I was having. And we were actually at a restaurant, and the one friend said, "This is the day my mother died. This is the anniversary of the day she died." And right there before me, I saw in front of me a physical form of a woman that she looked like a stereotypical witch, really long, dark black hair, gothic looking, and I was really confused. And I said, "This is weird, but did your mom have black hair?" And so she said, "Yes." And then immediately it's almost like the floodgates opened, and I experienced an overwhelm of sensory information in my physical body. So feeling heaviness in my chest, feeling like I couldn't breathe, feeling like my heart was racing. I got mental images in my mind as well as external in front of me, visual cues that did not make any sense to me. And what I learned very quickly by explaining to my friends, thank goodness they were open to what was happening to me, was I'm seeing a picture of a rose and it's a tattoo. I don't know what this means. And then, of course, why would I see this out of nowhere? We weren't talking about tattoos. And she said, my mother's name was Rose, and I have a tattoo of her on, my leg. So it was almost like I couldn't stop the communication. It's almost like you have 7 different people or phone lines yelling at you at once, from the sensory stimulus input of feeling in my body, sight, visual stimulation, auditory, hearing things. I was hearing Mariah Carey music, and then it turns out we were jumping to her sister who had also passed. So what I want people to understand is how this process actually works. And if anyone actually came to my class I had last fall, we went through a mediumship circle where we shared the process of what this looks like for me. And the best part about that class, if you were in it, I loved it so much. We actually did a reading for each of the people in the room, and I had everybody in the room use the similar techniques that I was using, that we taught them very briefly, and we all got information from every one of them, that proving my point that there's nothing special about being able to connect to the other side. Everybody's more sensitive in a specific area. If you're very visual of a person, meaning you can walk into a room and you can see something out of place, or colors or lights, or you're very sensitive in your eyes to them, you may be someone that would be more considered clairvoyant, meaning if you vividly have vivid dreams or a vivid imagination visually, if I say picture a purple elephant and you picture it in your mind right there, that is your brain using the sense of sight internally to be able to give you cues on information. And that's just one of the ways that spirit, or the world of the non-physical, communicates, using symbols, using language such as hearing. You can hear direct people say their name, or you can hear a song, but sometimes it's not as clear as that. Some people who have crossed over maybe weren't the best communicators when they were in the physical form. Maybe they were shy, but they were the type of people that when they were upset, they were passive aggressive, and you can feel their emotions in the room. And that's the type of information that you might get from that person. So the different senses that I utilize, again, are visual, seeing people physically in front of me and in my mind's eye; emotional, so clairsentient, meaning feeling in my own body sensations and emotions, even physical pain at the time of death; as well as hearing, which would be clairaudience, so hearing things. I also smell, so if someone was a smoker, or if they had someone had really strong perfume, I'll be able to smell that. As well as the sense that's called claircognizance. This is one that's the hardest to really hone in as an intuitive, but it's just knowing. You don't have affirmation through your physical senses of what you've gotten as far as informationally, but you just know. And over time, for me, working with this, one day my psychic volume knob got turned up, and I'm with friends at a local restaurant, and I'm getting all of this information flooding in, and I had no idea what to do. Well, luckily at that time, if anyone has worked with my wonderful partner, Matt Suter, he himself also is a medium. And we both had met, and I knew that he was going to be at my house after this dinner date we were doing at this restaurant. So of course I rushed back to the house with my friends in tow, and we still had messages just coming in, and I didn't know how to stop them. And luckily he was here to help me. And I've worked with many mediums, professionals, mentors along the way to help hone this. And I've learned a lot of things. I've learned a lot of things about misunderstandings about this work, especially when we're seeing a lot of mediums on television. You have to remember, it's Hollywood. It's over dramatized. There are amazing things that happen that are real. And then there are amazing things that happen that maybe aren't so glorious. They're not as extreme of messages, and maybe they cut those scenes out. So the first myth I want to talk about really relates to the Hollywood psychics. There are, unfortunately, amazing intuitive mediums that have had shows, and they've had to keep their ratings up, and they've had people that are involved with them do some things that aren't so professional or ethical in my book, and have maybe pulled information to really grandize their process. And then they, of course, were called frauds. Now, don't get me wrong, there are absolutely people out there that are cold reading. So they get information, they ask leading questions. And if you've ever been to an intuitive that asks a lot of questions, that process can really, if you're skeptical like myself, can really bring up a lot of eyebrows and raise your eyebrows going, wait a minute, they're asking questions here. How are they getting that information instead of just inferring or reading your body language? So the type of mediumship that I practice because of that, because my most important thing that I want to do is give people proof for their own healing. Not anyone who's crossed over. Most everybody who's crossed over is fine. They're not having any pain. It's everyone in the physical that still needs some frame of reference for what to do now and some closure. So I like to identify the person. I don't like to ask names. And I like to, how my process is, we sit down and I will give a image of what I'm getting to be connecting with that person who's crossed over. What they look like. Are they male or female? How did they pass? Are there any hobbies that they liked? Any music that they like to share? Any phrases that they usually said to the child? If anybody out there who's watching currently and has had a session with me, intuitive or afterlife, I'd love to hear your feedback about this and share, because some of the things are very specific. And one of the things you can do if you believe the myth that all mediums are fakes, really good to be skeptical and curious when you're going to see a holistic, intuitive professional. Very important, because some of the best mediums I've ever met are very skeptical. And I am one of them. I'm very, very skeptical. And I think it's really important to have that discernment. Now, the difference between skepticism and coming into a session where you have a firm subconscious, if you're not aware of it consciously, belief that what someone does is baloney. That's different than skepticism. So if you come in, you have a firm belief this is not real, I don't believe it, you're going to more likely than not have not a good experience. Or even if information comes through that is very clear, it may not phase you at all. I had a recent paranormal investigation I did with a friend. We went to Booby's Brewery with one of the local paranormal investigation teams was there. And there was this wonderful guy that was really having a great time. But at the end, he was really upset because he didn't have an experience. He was not what he calls skeptical. He said that he was skeptical, but the whole time I was looking at him, I'm thinking he's not skeptical. He is a firm believer that this is not real. And if you have that, your unconscious or your conscious mind is not going to allow any information for you to believe that it's true. You're going to write it off as something, oh, it could have been a coincidence, this, that. So there's a difference. So to clarify the myth that all mediums are fakes, that's absolutely not true. And I think that that's something that it's really, really hard, because a medium's job is not to convince you that they're real. They're just supposed to be the messenger. And sometimes people will come to me and they have not gone through certain stages of grief. I say that there are 5 things that block a mediumship or an intuitive session, mostly for afterlife communication. Number 1 is the timing. If you've ever been scheduled with me and something happens where you have to reschedule, or there's no openings for 3 months, it's usually supposed to be that way. Sometimes I'll get someone on my schedule, I'll look at their name, and I just have a feeling I'm not supposed to see them right now. And something will happen that we'll have to reschedule, or something weird will happen with my family, or I get sick and we have to reschedule. So that has happened. And sometimes that is the number 1 thing. It's just not the right time for you to connect with the other side, even if you eagerly want to, because it just happened. And that's the hard part, of course, because we as humans go through these emotions that we want to solve and resolve quickly. And sometimes we seek out a medium to do that. I really require at least 1 month that person has passed before I will allow someone to schedule with me. Unfortunately, we had someone call about a couple years ago, and they were desperate. They wanted to speak to someone now. My person, they had a boyfriend that had passed away 2 days prior. It is not right. It is not ethical or professional for any intuitive medium to connect when you've had that little time to process. So they hung up the phone. They said, well, I'm going to call someone else. And they said they found someone else up the street, and I hope the best for them, but it is not right from not just a psychological perspective, but from a healing process perspective to allow that type of thing to happen that short of notice. Another thing that can block mediumship is the practitioner. So you may have a practitioner that you don't necessarily connect with. You don't just get a good vibe with them. I mean, if you meet someone that's a stranger, maybe a neighbor, or someone that you meet anywhere that you're like, I connect with them, I could talk to them, I felt a vibe with them. That's going to open up and create a clear channel for communication, more so than someone that you don't really care for, that something about them irks you. And it may not be that they're a bad person. It may just be that you just don't jive with who they are. The way they communicate doesn't really connect with your style of communication. So it's really important that you connect with that practitioner. Another thing that can block the mediumship process is the grieving process. It's really important to go through that process. There are different stages of grieving, and they don't all happen in the same timing and the same order as you may realize. And so working with a counselor, a grief counselor, is highly recommended. If you are out there and you are a psychotherapist and you specifically work with grieving clients, please give me a call. I always am looking for more people to refer out to. Most of the time when someone calls, if I get a sense that they're not ready to get a reading yet, I usually will refer them to someone locally. And I'm so grateful for those out there. There are so many amazing articles, more studies from psychologists and people in the mental health realm looking at the process of mediumship and the extraordinary experience people have and how that helps with the healing process and sometimes gets people over this maybe being stuck in a certain phase of grief. So if you are a professional, please reach out to me. I would love to get your business card and connect so I can have someone else I can send clients to. And I base my clients' personalities on a personality of a practitioner that I'm looking for. I kind of try to link them up with what might have good chemistry. So by getting to know you a little bit, that helps me. So if you have not gone through that grieving process completely, that's okay. But if you're stuck and you're really, really anxious, you say, I have to meet with my loved one, my grandfather, my mother who's crossed over. I just can't get over that. Sometimes that grief can hold up as being called what I call the veil of grief, where I will get very clear information from that loved one, but it's not what you want to hear. Sometimes what you want to hear is that I wanted them to say they're sorry because they were an alcoholic or this or that. Sometimes you're processing not only your trauma, but maybe regrets or things that you feel guilty about, any unfinished business that you need to process through. And sometimes people are open to hearing that and it creates great healing and relief. But sometimes people are so tunnel visioned, this is what I want to hear when I'm going to see my practitioner or my coach, or sorry, my Afterlife Communication practitioner. Expectations is really, that leads into expectations. So really good example. So you ever see those shows where you have the medium that's like, and they wanted you to know that they know that you're going to be here because you had the heirloom necklace or the antique ring of your grandmother's that you brought with you and it's in your back pocket. Like those are the things that are amazing when those happen. I love when those things happen in my sessions because I never know what to expect. And the information that comes through, again, is visual. I'm getting a visual of what the person looks like. I'm getting an energy signature of what they feel like. And energy signature basically means they feel like a quiet person. They feel like a loud person. They were more patient. I get a signature of what that feels like as a personality. And then I may get words. And again, if they're not a good communicator, when they were in the flesh, they may not use words to communicate. They may just show me images of them standing in the corner and their body language, what they look like, and show me images of what hobbies they were interested in. But if you're expecting that they're the person that you're going to talk to, and they're going to tell you that their favorite show was Howdy Doody, and that you have a pair of their socks. This is a really true story, actually. I had a client that brought a pair of socks from their loved one in their purse. And we got all these great connecting points that were very healing for the person. It was exactly what they needed to hear. And they were satisfied after their session. But then they said to me, you said everything I wanted to see. It was exactly who it was. You couldn't have known these things. And these are people that did not give me their real name when they scheduled. And if you're skeptical, do that. When you're looking for a medium, don't give them your real name so they can't look you up. That way you can have more of an extraordinary experience, which will help you through your grieving process. But they were like, you did everything. It was so great. But you didn't tell me about the socks that I brought of theirs that's in my purse. So I want to ask you a question. If you don't have a physical body and you've crossed over and you're trying to connect with somebody that only gets bits and pieces of what you're saying through maybe a phrase, an image that you're sending through telepathy, and you're kind of playing this game of spirit charades with this person and taking a lot of energy to do so. From the medium taking a lot of energy to connect, and the spirit taking a lot of energy to connect back. And you get everything that really is important to you to say through. But that person, the socks that are in the socks that are in the purse, if they aren't as important to that person's healing, are you going to waste your energy talking about the socks? No. So in some cases, absolutely, we've had amazing experiences with just random things, random jewelry, sneakers, this weird pewter heart-shaped box that has a blue detailed stuff that I'm like, oh, I don't know. And some of these things the clients didn't know either, which was really cool. But it's most important that you can't have expectations. It's going in watching a movie. So timing is really important when you go to see an afterlife communication practitioner or a medium. Choosing the practitioner you have a good chemistry with, making sure you've gone through that grieving process and reached out to someone professionally if you have not, and keeping your skepticism in check. Skepticism is very healthy, but being a non-believer is going to have, you're not going to have anything. You're going to go through that expectations of what the block is, that expecting something to be or to not to be. And that really messes up the process. I have another myth as well, that people think that mediums have a gift from God that they're born with. And I'm telling you that this is not the case. I frown upon people saying that there's something special about them because they're a medium and they've been born with this. And I am so special. I've had people call me, unfortunately, and just to schedule a massage and say, well, I'm a psychic medium and I'm just calling. So just so you know, we all have levels of our personal adult development that we have to go through, but we don't have to base ourselves and our identity off of being a medium or being intuitive. All of us are intuitive. We each have it to a certain degree. And it's really, you can absolutely train to become more proficient in it. But if you are meant to be a great pianist, you will be. If you're meant to just learn how to play Mary Had a Little Lamb, great. But we can all learn to play Mary Had a Little Lamb. We can all learn to connect with our loved ones in little, gentle, subtle ways. But we're not all gifted by God that we're born with this. It's not some special gift. We all have this connection. So I want to really make that clear, because I think a lot of what I call spiritual egotism gets involved in this. And sometimes it makes this whole profession look bad. And then you have people that are overcompensating and maybe pulling information. And then we have these myths of mediums being fake and not maybe practicing professionally or ethically. And then the last one I want to say, a myth, is mediums can prove there's an afterlife. This is going to get you thinking. So whenever I've talked to people who have crossed over, all of them describe what the afterlife looks like differently depending on their religious beliefs when they were here alive. And some people have not shared it at all, even if I ask. So proof that life lives on after we pass, yes. But can a medium prove that there is a heaven? I don't know. And I would say the answer is no at this current time, because I don't know any medium out there. I've read so many books, connected with a lot of different mentors and colleagues, that it seems to be dependent on the subjective experience of that spirit they're talking to, what they see or what they're experiencing on the other side. And maybe that's what it's meant to be. Maybe the afterlife or heaven is supposed to be what we want it to be. And maybe it doesn't look like pearly gates and clouds. So that's something that people say that they can prove. Mediums can prove there's an afterlife. I don't think so. We can prove that energy lives on, because energy is neither created nor destroyed. It is a scientific law, fifth law of thermodynamics. Check me on that one, science nerds. But that's really important to remember. And I will share some more articles too, if you want to look into the awesome studies they're doing about extraordinary experiences in psychotherapy and how mediumship is helping get through the grieving process. It's really important. You're going to see more of this becoming mainstream as we have more psychotherapists and people validating this work, and you have more people practicing professionally and keeping some of the riffraff out of this professional line of work. How to choose a medium. I'm going to finalize my talk with this. Important thing to do is to ask for reviews from others. Ask for the reviews, ask for their feedback to know if that person is legit. Ask for their pricing. Every medium is different. Some people don't charge because they don't do it professionally, and that doesn't mean they're not good. It just means that they do other things with their mainstream career. And some mediums are really busy and they have very few openings, so they may charge more. So the pricing doesn't always matter about the quality of the work. That's why you ask for the reviews. But ask for the pricing, especially if you have a budget. Feel a connection with that person. If you're talking to them on the phone to see if it's a right fit to schedule with them, or if you see a video of them or look at their picture on their website, make sure there's a connection there. You don't need to tell them your name. You can give them a fake name if you need to. If you feel worried about that, make sure you can do that when you choose a medium. And if they say, no, you need to give me your first and last name, I'd be very skeptical. And when they do your reading, ask if they ask questions, like leading questions, or if they do more what's called evidential mediumship, where they don't necessarily ask leading questions like, is it your grandfather who has passed away? So what I do more so, and that's nothing wrong with that type of mediumship if they do ask questions, but if you're skeptical and you need a more extraordinary experience, work with more of an evidential medium. And so what I will do is I will close my eyes and I'll say, all I need you to do is say yes or no to make sure I'm on the right psychic radio station, so to speak. And then once you say yes, I know I got the person, this is what they look like, I'm getting a male, this age, this is how they died, and then we just go from there. And I don't look at you to get your body language. I don't want to see you because I don't want to get your visual cues to make me feel like, okay, I'm on the right track, that type of thing. And disclaimer, a medium is not a healthcare professional. They should never diagnose you. Even if they say they're a medical intuitive, they should never diagnose you. They should just give you information for educational purposes only. And that's it. So my door prize, guys, thank you guys for listening. I don't think I have time for questions, but thank you so much, Jenny, for sharing about your experience. I loved reading for you, and I know your friend who had passed. That was wonderful. Issues with energy blocks. So I'm going to ask this one. I'm going to answer this question for Agent Fox Scully. Nice name. I'm going to answer this because some people who do mediumship, they're strictly mediums. They work with people who have crossed over. I call myself an integrative intuitive because I am a massage therapist and energy worker. So I work with the physical body. I don't ever call myself a medical intuitive because that term gets people asking you questions like, do I have cancer? And no, you can't even ask that to a medical intuitive. And if anyone says that they have an answer for you, run for the hills because you can't diagnose. But what I do is I read energy. Energy is energy is energy. So energy blocks, someone who's crossed over, that has a signature, a pet who has crossed over. I don't call myself an animal communicator, so I don't primarily just work with pets, but I focus more on helping people get over what's blocking them in their lives. And sometimes that relates to someone who's crossed over and helping healing that connection. So when someone comes to see me for an afterlife session, if they don't need that for their healing, and we might get a little bit about grandma and grandpa, but most of it's about that person's physical health, their health with their family, their husband. What can you do to work with that? How can you go see a counselor? Or maybe you need body work. We work with that. And that's really the answer to your question is, do I help people overcome energetic blocks? Yes. I work primarily with people who are intuitive as well. A lot of people come to me who are highly sensitive. They don't know how to handle their sensitivity, and they want to learn how to tone it down a little bit so they don't feel overwhelmed energetically. They don't feel drained. And people who label themselves empaths or highly sensitive people, I work with a lot of them and other intuitive professionals to help them hone in their gift. So answer that question. I hope that answered it for you. My next, I'm going to say one more thing. If you have any questions about anything else, please email us or call us because I'd love to answer more questions. I feel like there's more on this topic. But thank you guys for coming. I'm very excited to introduce our next speaker.